I'm gonna wait a little bit to see who else logs in. All right, so I'm gonna get started here. It looks like there's not anyone in the live right now, but I'm hoping that some of you do join and ask your questions in the chat because I want it to come live so I can, answer your questions in real time and obviously case by case. But really, today's topic I wanted to cover was what to do after being accepted into a graduate school program, and I have my notes here on my phone that I'm gonna kind of talk about. But let me know what questions you do have if you decide to get on the live. Use the chat for that, and I'll answer your questions. But I do plan to make a formal video on these little points that I'm going to make a shorter video. That way, in case this one goes a little bit longer, then you still have access to a shorter version of what I'm going to speak about. But let's get right into it. So a lot of you have probably already heard of the decisions from schools you applied to. So I know a lot of people have reached out to me in particular and told me they got into Harvard Graduate School of Education and other programs. So if you are at that stage, here are some tips and advice that you need to take in terms of what to do after being admitted. And so before I get into that, I do want to say congratulations for being admitted. That's a huge accomplishment. Take some time to celebrate that accomplishment. But there's also some things that you want to consider before you matriculate into a graduate school program in the fall. And so have in my notes here, I have about 8 things that you need to consider after being admitted. So the first thing that you need to consider after being admitted, and the thing that you need to do immediately, I think, is attend an admitted students weekend or a day. Most programs, they do offer an opportunity for you to either fly out to the campus and explore the campus, talk to faculty and staff and students in your program, and then just do a couple of other fun activities within your program. And so I want you to make that time to either attend in person or virtually for a couple of reasons. So one of them is obviously you're going to be able to get to know the faculty, staff, and possibly your cohort and current students. This is an opportunity for you to get to ask those pressing questions that maybe you can't ask, in an email, or maybe it's something that you want to ask that's case by case. Use this opportunity to meet with those faculty in person because you're going to yield greater result versus just emailing back and forth. You also get to explore the graduate department, institution, and city that you potentially might be living in. So I like to look at Admitted Students Weekend as a way to kind of get a taste of what it's going to be like to be a student there. So you're going to be able to walk around campus, you're going to be able to walk around the department, you're going to be able to talk to faculty, staff, current students, and see what the culture is like within that department and institution. And Admitted Students Weekend is a great way for you to test out what it would be like for different schools that you've been admitted into. So try to attend as many of these admitted student weekends as you can, so you can get a taste of what might be the best fit for you. And also, you can also use this opportunity to obviously ask all of your pending questions. I think one of the biggest questions people ask me in particular is how to finance a graduate education. And here you're able to potentially not. I think that usually programs will talk about funding and funding opportunities as part of a workshop in their admitted students weekend or day. I know UCSD does that, but also you can schedule an appointment to meet with the person that's in charge of the funding and funding opportunities, and you can ask them your case by case questions and see maybe if you can negotiate an increase of a stipend or something at admitted students weekend. Something else that you could do at admitted students weekend is use that time to explore the city. You're going to be living in a city that might be different from where you live, and so you want to make sure that you know what's available and outs- outside of the institution and your program. And so a great way to do that is by coming out to the school that you got accepted into, and see what the city is like, and see if you can picture yourself living there and conversing with the people that live there, etc. But also it can give you an opportunity to kind of explore housing options too. So how expensive is it to live in the city that you plan to potentially attend, and where do most students live, and you can explore those communities while you're out here. The next tip that I have for you here is you want to also obviously accept and decline offers. Usually, programs want you to make a decision by May 1st, so you still have a couple of months to decide where you want to go. But you want to make sure that once you decide where you want to go into the database and accept that offer. And then once you accept that offer, then you also want to make sure that you notify the other programs you got accepted into that you want to decline their offer. And that's going to allow you, or by declining your offer, it's going to allow a space to open up for someone maybe on the wait list. So if you already know that you're not going to be attending a certain program, make sure you let that program know immediately so that they can offer that position over to someone else who might want to really attend that program. So decide where you want to attend and both accept and decline those offers at every program that you got admitted into. Some ways that you can go about, knowing where you want to accept is by comparing and contrasting your offers by creating a spreadsheet or possibly a pros and cons list, and then using that data to help you navigate which is the best graduate school program for you. Something else you can do, or something else you should consider, is also funding packages and seeing if they offer things like health insurance, travel expense, or maybe moving expense, allocation. So when you move out to a new city, do they offer some, reimbursement for that, or do they not? Do they offer travel funding so you can attend conferences? Do they offer fellowships, etc.? So figure out what your funding package entails, and then make sure that you are comparing it and contrasting those funding packages. If you don't know what the funding packages mean, make sure you communicate with the financial aid office, or maybe even your department staff member who focuses on the funding side of the program, and ask your questions so you can better assess if that funding package is going to be a good package for you or not. The third tip that I have for you here is to submit required documents. So every program and every institution in the United States in particular is going to have different requirements for this, but some of the general requirements are submitting official transcripts to your institution and your program. So obviously, most applications, they ask you for a GPA and unofficial transcripts. And so in order for you to be able to attend and enroll in the program, then you're going to have to submit and mail in official transcripts so they can verify that what you put on the application is correct. So you want to make sure that you get those in a timely fashion. And sometimes they don't let you register for classes until that documentation is received by your program and the institution or the graduate division. Other things that you might have to submit is immunization records. So in the United States, they want to make sure that the students that are attending the campus are vaccinated. That means that they have certain vaccinations that are going to help protect the students on campus. So, for example, a tuberculosis vaccination is something that you're going to have to have before you can even step foot on a campus, and that's for every U.S. campus. So you want to make sure that you go to your first. I want to say first, you want to make sure that you ask what type of vaccinations are needed in order for you to enroll on campus. And then you obviously want to go to your healthcare provider and make sure that you are able to get those vaccinations that meet the requirements for the institution. And then because we are in this pandemic, you most institutions require that their students are vaccinated, unless they have an exemption or something. But you want to make sure that that paperwork has been submitted to the proper departments on campus before you enroll. And you can't even enroll into courses until that documentation has been received by the institution. I know I had an issue with that when I was enrolling into UCSD. So um, I didn't have my vaccination at that point, and so I had to. They put a hold on my course enrollment, so I couldn't enroll in classes until I provided documentation that I was able to, or that I had the vaccination, or that I wasn't able to get a vaccination for whatever reason. And so I chose to, um, what's it called, not submit paperwork because at that time I was living at home back in Washington, so I didn't see a need for me to have the vaccination when I enrolled at UCSD because I was going to be at UCSD campus for a whole year. And then eventually I got the vaccination and uploaded my documents, and then they were able to accept it and then allow me to enroll in courses throughout the times that I've been, throughout the quarters that I've been a UCSD student. Something else that you want to consider in terms of being admitted or after you being admitted is that you want to search for and apply for housing. So searching and applying for housing is one of the biggest things that you want to think about when after you've been admitted, right? Because obviously you want to know where you're going to live, especially if you're from out of state or international. You want to make sure that you have affordable housing potentially, or a housing option that's close to campus where you can walk, etc. And so the first thing that I would do is I would start by checking to see if your institution has a graduate student housing option. The both times I've been to graduate school, so at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, and then currently as a PhD student at the University of California, San Diego, I have lived in graduate student housing. And the reason why I choose to live in graduate student housing is for a couple of reasons. So one of them is that it's probably the most affordable option, even though Boston, the greater Cambridge area at Harvard, and then San Diego, it's pretty expensive, I'm not gonna lie. But at least you know that by living in a graduate student housing at your institution, you're going to have a clean apartment and livable conditions. And especially because I was coming from out of state, I wasn't able to come visit and check out an apartment complex before I signed a lease. And so because I know that UCSD or institutions as a whole, they have to abide by certain levels and qualities of living, that I knew that what I was paying for, even though I haven't visited, was going to be of quality for me to live in. And so that's one of the reasons why I chose to live in graduate student housing. Another reason is because it's really close to campus. So when I used to go to the Harvard Graduate School of Education, there I lived in Harvard Square, and so I was able to walk to campus, and I didn't have to have a car or any type of transportation. I could just walk. And similar to the UCSD, even though I did bring a car, I don't really use it because I walk to campus. It's really close to campus. It's walkable to campus. And so I prefer to walk versus drive because parking could get expensive on campus. And I thought that graduate student housing was a better option for me because it allowed me to get to campus whenever I wanted without having to drive, even though I have my car. And that's another reason why I think it's a good reason to look for graduate student housing as opposed to housing outside of the university. Even though there is options, it could be a little bit more expensive, but also further away from campus. And then additionally, when you are trying to get housing outside of the university, there's a couple of things that you have to provide in terms of documentation. So one of them is that you have to have a credit score, right? And so if you don't have a credit score, then you can't get housing. You can't get housing outside of the university. The graduate student housing doesn't require a credit score check. And so that's another benefit of doing graduate student housing. Um, Something else that you have to consider if you're going to go outside of the university for housing is that they're going to ask for a first month's rent, last month's rent, and then a deposit. And so that can add up, especially if you don't have the money to put forth right away. That can add up. And that's the only way you're going to be able to get an apartment outside of the university is by providing all that amount of money. With university housing, you don't have to provide any of that. So all you have to do is sign up, and then you pay your your first month's rent when your lease starts. And that's a great thing about living on campus. So I highly encourage you to look at graduate student housing as your first option. And if you don't qualify or there's no availability, then you want to look outside. But that should be your first priority, especially if you're coming from out of state or if you're an international student. Let's see what else is there here. Yeah, I think I plan to make like formal videos on the topic of housing in the near future, because I think that's an important topic that doesn't get talked a lot about on YouTube. But also, housing is probably the most difficult thing you can that you have to do after being admitted. So I want to make sure that all of you have the proper resources that you can go ahead and find affordable, reliable housing. And so I do plan to make proper videos on that topic. The next step that you should be taking in terms of after you being admitted to a program is more for international students. So applying for your student visa, right? So how are you going to be able to enter the United States for you to attend graduate school? I don't know much about the application process for student visas because I didn't have to do that myself. I do plan to bring a couple of international students to my channel so they can share their experience in terms of attaining a student visa and how they went about it, but that will be in the near future. But in terms of my notes for the student visa is you want to work with the graduate division on your campus in order to help you apply for and obtain a student visa if you are an international student. Um, so you want to make sure that you get in contact with them right away when you get admitted. That way they're able to help you with that process and they're able to help you get to your graduate school program. The next thing that you want to do is you want to connect with your cohort colleagues, right? So most graduate school programs are cohort based. You're gonna come into the program with a cohort of students that have been admitted for that year, and those people you're going to be taking classes with. You're going to be, engaging in research and different opportunities that graduate students engage in. And so you want to get to know these people early on for a couple of reasons. So one of them is to build your network, right? So especially if you're coming to a new place by yourself without family and or without a partner, whatever it is, then you want to have that support network. And one way to build that is by getting to know your cohort before you even step foot on campus. So this can be in the summer. You might want to organize a Zoom call one-on-one or with the group. You might want to organize to meet up if you live relatively close, or maybe you're driving down to whatever school you or whatever state you're planning to attend school at, and maybe you want to meet on the way there, or maybe when you get to campus, the first thing you do is meet up with some of your cohort people and engage in conversations, get to know them a little bit more. But you want to build that network because you definitely need a network to succeed in graduate school, and the best way to do that is by engaging with your cohort right away and meeting with them once you've been admitted to your program. Let's see what else do I have here. And then also just to wrap up that note there is that by meeting with your cohort, whether it's on Zoom or in person or when you get here, it sets the tone in terms of what to expect from your colleagues, right? So you're going to be, if you meet people in your cohort that you really vibe with and that you can confide in, they can be the people that you reach out to when you're struggling with the course or when you're struggling personally or when you're struggling with whatever aspect of graduate school. You want to have that person that's like your ride or die, that person that you can reach out to if you do face a challenge. It's always nice to have someone like that to confide in and ask your questions. The next point that I want to make here is that you want to read the program handbook. And the reason why is because it's going to help you identify a couple of things. It's going to help you identify the different milestones that your program requires in order for you to graduate. So it's going to help you learn about, the coursework and what type of course you get to take. It's going to help you learn about possibly like a qualifying exam or a dissertation proposal or a defense. So it's going to help you learn about the process to attain that PhD. And it's going to also showcase different things that you should expect from the program in that handbook. And most handbooks are public information that you can find on the websites. And so once you get admitted, read that handbook. And you don't have to memorize this handbook. You just have to I would suggest that you read it and get to know what's in there. And and it's going to help you with a bunch of things like how to contact certain people when certain things happen, in your program, or if you face a challenge, who can you seek support from, etc. But the most important thing that I want you to get from that handbook is really the different milestones you have to meet in order for you to attain that PhD. Other things to consider in terms of reading the program handbook is that you'll also learn about like different policies and procedures for different things in terms of you transitioning over to the program, and that's also important information that you can take from um, reading the handbook. Finally, the last point that I want to make here is that just to celebrate your accomplishments and get some rest. If you are going to go to a PhD program, a PhD is 5 plus years. And so you want to make sure that you get your rest now. So take a little break, a couple weeks, a month, a summer off before you get to graduate school for a PhD program, because when you get here, sleep is something that you don't do. Like you're always going to be doing something, you're always going to be researching, you're always going to be reading, writing, completing assignments, etc. And so once you start your PhD program, then you don't have time to rest as much as you would before you start the program. This also goes for master's programs. You're going to be in an intense program that's 1 or 2 years where you're going to be doing a bunch of things to obviously complete the degree. And so you want to make sure that you first celebrate your accomplishment, but also get that rest before you get to your graduate program. And then a couple of things just to go along the lines of this is that you want to celebrate all your small and large accomplishments, not only before you attend your PhD program or master's program, but also when you get here. Celebrate those small accomplishments, because it's going to help you get through the program and it's going to help you stay motivated. Let's see what else is here. I did put also that a PhD can be a lonely process, especially because you are researching something that's niche and you feel that you are only interested in. So it could be a lonely process and you might not have someone else to relate to. So you want to make sure you take the time before you start a program to get that rest and connect with people that that you love and that support you before you get to the program, especially if you're moving across the country or to a different state or internationally. You're not going to have that support immediately. So you want to take advantage of the closeness that you have with those people now. And then that leads me to my last point here is use this time to rest and hang out with your loved ones before you relocate and start this grueling academic career. So once you start your PhD program or master's program, it's a grueling process. Like I mentioned earlier, you feel lonely, it's intense, you have a lot of work to do, and it's nonstop. Even on weekends, I feel like I'm always working. And so you want to take this time to rest and also engage with your loved ones before you either relocate or yeah, before you relocate, and then you have to and then you start this intense journey of graduate school. All right, so that's all the tips that I have for you today. It looks like not no one got on the call, which is fine. But I hope that these tips really helped you out. Like I mentioned earlier, I am going to make a formal video on these tips. Hopefully, it's a little bit shorter and it helps you with steps to do after you've been admitted to a graduate program. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comment section. I'll get to it as soon as possible. And yeah, I'm going to end the call now because I see that no one's on here and no one asked questions. But I hope that this was somewhat helpful, and hopefully you can join me on another live in the near future.